남자 지가산.
라스 당서 동을 덴바 쉐베카스라 다 동을 덴바 델라 넘버 시어레스 다 넘버 시디드네 미다바 동을와 동바 다메바세 넘버 시드레 다디 넘버 시디 용거에 김정거레스라는 넘기는 동을 덴바라 친지로도 따게 와라 다 친지로도 따게 가서 가서 넘긴 가서 니랭이 풍보를 미네 미상와라 상와라신 미다발라 따버진 대화 동을라 대화진 다음에 발라 다두진 어디다 보더니 동을 된 발라 록버쇼베 록슈 시도
So
되네 된다 디 독초라더니 동을 된 시디 가서 되니 독초 동을 된 넘버 시 코네션 그레스
so now we are teaching on the first for the noble truth, which is the noble truth of suffering, and which I said there is four aspects of it, which are impermanence, impermanence, suffering, and emptiness and selflessness. And the reason why we have four aspects is usually as an ordinary being, we have wrong view. We view the skandha of klesha, the never-level pumbo, in a wrong way, and which we cling. We have these four mistake, the clinging or mistaken. Like we cling something unpure is pure. We cling something which is suffering as a happiness, and then we cling something selfless as there's a self and so forth. Therefore, since there are four ways of viewing it wrongly, and for the entity of that four wrong views, we have four aspects, which are teaching on impermanence, suffering, emptiness, and selflessness.
all of na did with number cd tambodni midaba shena deni dungal sigri songra tin deni sangye gi donala yang songyore gang midaba de dungal wa o songre tin deni midaba la deni dungal sigri sedi midaba imba gimjen jene dungal sigri songre.
So as I said earlier, the order of this, first the impermanence is taught, and then suffering and so forth. The reason is, I said earlier, if you know impermanence well, then you will naturally know the suffering. As Buddha also taught in the sutra, he says, whatever is impermanent, that is suffering.
Oh, las. Tin didni gang midaba de dungal wa yin songedi. Diga su dungal de ta gatagi shibane dungal la sum yora. Dungal ki dungal gurwe dungal khaba de dungal sum yore. Tin nane dini dungal ki dungal de hajang ra pare dini simjin tham dundro yin che shengi ra de. Dini gurwe dungal de yang dini dele tes thaware de hine yang dini gurwe dungal de yang ado ha go do. Sagje ki dewa de sama gurwa de ko su dungal de surge do. Tin dini gurwe dungal de yang ado ha go yore. Ta nganso ki shema tuwe de kare lam khaba de gi dungal de re. O din dini khaba de gi dungal de shela de midaba shen gore es.
So when Buddha said that, when he said whatever is impermanence, that's suffering, what he meant is that, of course, as I said earlier, there are three kinds of suffering, which are the suffering of change, and suffering of all-pervasive suffering. And the most gross level of suffering is what we call the suffering of suffering, and that is understood by everyone very easily. We can understand very easily suffering as a suffering. And then when we say suffering of change, that is also a little subtle than the first one, but still this is something that can be understood by us. For example, whenever our contaminated happiness changes into suffering, then we can experience the suffering. So that is also understandable quite easily. And the suffering that we cannot understand in an easy way is what we call the all-pervasive suffering. So therefore, when Buddha said, whatever is impermanent, that is suffering, means he actually meant the last one, which we call all-pervasive suffering. And that is what we have to understand.
Hola. Tin dini khaba de gi dungal se di da midaba shena khaba de gi dungal singre songre. Tin di gang midaba de dungal wa yin songre. Tin da dini yuje thamje midaba sagje thamje dungal wa sne ta ka ta gi chage hina songdo. 강 뒤제 임바디 미다바레 강 미다바 임바디 둥갈바레스.
So therefore, if we can understand the impermanent nature of things well, then we will be easy for us to understand the all pervasive suffering. And that's why it said in Buddha, when he taught what we call the four C's of Buddha's teaching, and it says whatever is compounded, whatever is compounded, that is impermanent. Whatever is contaminated, that is suffering.
올라스. 띵다다 디가서드니 트리시 몽보요레. 뒤제 탐제 미다바레. 내는 강 미다바 탐제 둥갈바레. 서데가서다. 지당 뒤제 탐제 미다바임바. 레디 네 디 미다 뒤제 탐제 미다바 사제 탐제 둥갈바 서데가서 뒤제 탐제 미다바 힘바 탐제 둥갈바이라나. 되는 양 아주 상기기 꾸다 상기기 얘네 구승 툭 되서양 상기기 넘긴다 되서야 되네 미다바 따라와 되네 미다바 있는 네 상만에 둥알이 뭐 달기라 상기기 수구 되서야 미다바라 되네 네 상만 둥알이 뭐 달기라 되네 답이 늦지기 지대여라 답이 네 신경만 되서야 왜 그러래서
Lasso.
답이 신감 되서야 둥알이 뭐 달기라 드네 그것이다 이 거래라는 네 것을 드네 뒤제해야 됩니다 봐서야 돼 지당 뒤제다 미다바라고 해요 말해서
Lasso.
이 것을 뒤제디 아니 레닝이 뒤제베 뒤제라고 그래서 이 것을 미다바데 지당 기직 집에 미다바던라고 말해 드네 레닝이 왕기 집에 미다발라고 그래서 근데 성도와
So something that we should understand here, an important point is that when we say all compounded things are impermanent and all that is contaminated is suffering, then if you are asked, does that mean all the compounded things are the suffering? Then answer is no. Because, for example, the Rupakaya form of the Buddha and all the pure realm, which we call the pure world and the pure container and content, these are also what we call the compounded things, but they are not suffering. And then so the definition here is whatever is conditioned by the klesha and karma, and that is suffering. Whatever is conditioned by the what is compounded by the karma and klesha, that is the kind of definition of here when we say the compounded things are suffering. When if you know things as a impermanent, then you will know suffering means this is a definition here of being impermanent.
last thing that the gang to Jim, but Midaba in Shiva DJ, Lenin Dujabala Gogure, then Lenin Dujab Midaba de Tama, then Gang Midaba de Dungalwa in City, Lenin Wangi Chibi Midaba de Tama Dungalores.
So we should understand here when Buddha said, whatever is impermanent, that is suffering, means anything or everything that is conditioned by the power of klesha and karma, and these things are all nothing but suffering.
Then then cup de la Dungal said the Garelana, Shawang, later Yumum be Shawang de la Dungal Goware.
So in this content, that the meaning of suffering is something that is under the power of others, which means that under the power of klesha and karma.
The Gausu Kabadji Dungal said it's for a chipula lago mare. Not the Niling Pumbo Koran Dungalra. Niling Pumbo Koran Dungal, Niling Pumbo di, Lenin Wangi Kigore, Lenin Wangi Chigdogore. The Anthony, Kiwa and Chipaniga, Lenin Shamara. Or the Anthony, D. Dungalores. The Antiga Dungalvare said the Garazana. Tini coverage of a name, Imba. He cures a name, but the Dungal Sigores.
So here, when we say suffering, it doesn't necessarily mean the feeling of suffering, because as I said, the skandhas or the aggregate self, which we in Tibetan we say the aggregates of klesha itself is suffering because it was produced by karma and klesha, and also it will cease by the karma and klesha. Therefore, whatever under the power of klesha and karma is what we call the suffering. Therefore, it doesn't necessarily mean that suffering means something that we feel as an unhappiness. So anyway, anything that doesn't make you feel happy or that doesn't please you is what we call the suffering here. Then and then anything that you should be renounced from is what we call the suffering.
Hola, tinzadini manzo kungi migi doje sungdo 계신 직비 취진인 비치는 미다바인 파관놈의 미슨 버제베시는 등을와인 성세 이것은 등을 써야 되다래 파관놈의 미슨 버제베들라 등을 고고 그래스 근데 파관놈의 시그나 이 교회 내서 쓰고인다 등을 쓰고 그래서 남긴가서 켜바드지 등을 파고에 또 그래 성으로 배나 파고 켜바드지 등을 집어서 교육이 또 두고 말에 파고에 또 그래 간데레 남는 거라서더니 부냥마치 락틀도 샤거나 락틀도 샤나 서로 말해 가서 근데 집어서 교육이 켜바드지 등을 들어버려 손에 집어서 교라 근데 부디 민나나 성나 산에서 두고 말아 근데 파관나라 뒤져 같은 거래 성으로 켜바드지 등어디 뒤에서는 파관는 게 시그나 이 교회 내 인상 저 등을 라버려서 먼저 이 교회 내에서 통투고 말아 이 교회 내 레디 이내 가서기 이 교회 내에서 통투고 말아 어제단들이 파관는 믿음 버져버리 등을와 인사디 파관는 게 지금 신도 이 교회 내 인바 인상들 두지기 등을 라버려서
파관은 미툼 버져버려 미툼 발성서 미뚝 발성서
믿음 버져버성도 이게 두지기
미tum기 들어가
믿음 버져 그다지 가르는 파관는 게 지금 이 교회 내 인바 됐어 그거 알아 나 레셔디
that's it 하고 나서 so omniscient Mikyo Dorje, the eighth Karmapa says, since this is something that is arising and in the nature of arising and ceasing, that's what we call the impermanent. And since this is something that is not in harmonious with the Arya beings, and it is called the suffering. So what he means here is that for ordinary being like us, it's very difficult for us to understand or realize the all purposes suffering is suffering, and for the being of Arya, it's very relevant. They can understand and they can feel it very easily, and that's why the omniscient Mikyo Dorje said, since it is not in harmonious with the Arya beings and is suffering. For example, the image that is given to illustrate the all purposes suffering is a piece of hair. For example, if you have a piece of hair on your palm, you don't feel any uncomfortable there. But if you put the same piece of hair in your eyes, then nobody have to tell you there's a piece of hair in your eyes. You can feel very strongly and uncomfortable and suffering there. So in the likewise, for the ordinary beings, the all purposes suffering is like having a piece of hair on your palm. And for the Arya beings or noble beings, the all purposes suffering is like having the piece of hair in your eyes. So that's why Mikyo Dorje says, since it is in the nature of arising and ceasing, it is impermanent, and since in the nature of disharmony with the Arya beings, it is suffering.
Hola. Tiene que ser teniendo que sacar ni lengue fungbodi. 이 교회 내 임비 김생 거르래라나 되는 것도 사진 일행 부모들 기회 제수 타마시고 그러 당아도 도와리두기 내 가와 깨네 깨월렘에 타마디 시고 그러 진이 기회 타마치 소라 말에 깨와 탐제 치외 타진래 저는 깨와 탐제 치외 타진이 버디 이 교회는 서로
And then one reason why we call these aggregates of the contaminated aggregates of the klesha is the subject of something that we should renounce from, is because the end of the birth, which is the starting of our skandha, the end of that is death. As long as you are being born in samsara, doesn't matter which rim, any rim of six samsara, the end of your birth is death. So that's why we call something that is not really clear, something that is pleasing to us, but that is something. It is something that makes us sad, and then something that we should be renouncing from.
Olas. Tin didni. Mas DJ thamje midaba se midaba di dini midaba ragwa da midaba thamani yara. Ta midaba ragwa di ngaso danda kewe chima kewe thama chiware se di midaba ragwa rawa.
So when we say all rounded things are impermanent, and there is two different kind of impermanence again, the grosser level and the subtle level. Then we say that the end of the birth is death is the example of the grosser level of impermanence.
Ola. Dini tini ngaso danda da danda ngana sumbu negab la mise di kandi nedang kibo yena yang tini thama shi gogure se shiwe nesu di ngebra shiwa yimba da namji chame ba yimbe su di tini nesu shib sabu jene samluta na tini sem kyo nang yongdo di garre la na sumba di chiwe midaba digi sumba dungal yimba di tini loyu du tsumbar chigo re so shiwa de samlu ma da danda sumbe negab de dungal yimba go thugumdo 시베 태진이 버디더니 14보제 삼도다나 다다더니 숨베 내가라 가지 기보연에더니 심 껴하는 자기도 어디에다 드니 치베 미다가 삼도다나 땅와라 되니 애니 치베 미다가 디기 숨바디 켜바디지기 동을 힘바디 넘긴 가서 설투고 말에 치베 미다가 되니 14보제 삼도다나 숨베 내가비양 기교에 내서도 통고도 어디에다 드니 디가르라네 켜바디지기 동안 라파 통고래 선 디가서.
So it is said that the way how we can experience the grosser level of the all-pervasive suffering is that, for example, when we are leading a perfect life, then we feel very happy, we have no problem at all. But if you think about the death, and then if you think about the definite death and also undefinite time of the death, you never know when it's definite that you're going to die, but you don't know when you're going to die. It's undefinite time of the death. Then it brings you some kind of sadness about your life, no matter how happy you are, how happy life you are leading. And then if you don't think about the death at all, then you're just feeling happy with that. But when you think about the definite death is coming, and then undefinite time of the death, you never know, then it makes makes us feel a little sadness. And that is actually said, the thinking about the death in a very concise way is the way of making us experience the grosser level of what we call the all-purpose suffering.
Hola, dini midabara samladana kewe thama chiwa imbadi dela dini keba dije dunga raba thong to gure yasumse ta pedo chashana nganzo mi gyakab gi nyeba sabchen jingi sokto gi nyeba babdebe mi ji yaro ta sokto gi nyeba babdebe mi di dini se imba tha chesaro gyakab gi trimdan galwe nyeba je eni sokto gi nyeba kim강기다 그 소통이 내가 땅 거 그래서 타치비 미지여라 근데 미디 내가 소통이 내가 마당기 버도 되니 강산 나라 되는 농지 풍숨 소발라 농지네 데데 기부단에 데데나 되니 그 니미지 세야 임바 타쳐 살아 어디 가서 되니 그런 세야 임바 타쳐 임바 되니 세야기 드림 그 되가 임바디 상마 된지 가서 그런 게 되니 강산 나라 되비 연전 농지베 되와디 동월도 통으로 이게 내서도 통으로 배디단 때디 나랑서 미식 기부 대디단 찍버려서 그랬다 치외 내수도 성로 마당나는 기부여래 치외 내수도 성로다나 이니 이게 내수래 perna 소토기 네바 바비미 내가 강상에 나라 되비 연전 농지네 네바도 찍버려서.
So the example given is that when we think about our death and then uncertain time of the death, then it will make us understand a little bit about that our life or our the contaminated skandha of pressure is pervaded by suffering, is For example, if there is someone who committed some illegal things and the death penalty is decided for him or her and by the court, so this person who already have the death penalty and he's in the death row, then he or she knows that he's going to get the death penalty very soon. Then for this person, no matter how much enjoyable things, the desire we wishes the Dobe then means the qualities of desire realm in a very perfect palace, has everything, but still he or she cannot really enjoy it because he or she knows that he or she will be receiving the death penalty very soon. Like this way, like the same way, if you meditate on the death and the uncertain time of the death, then that will make us feel the same way about this life, no matter what kind of life you are leading, no matter how good life you are living, it will make you feel sad with the life.
Hola. Tigangla dene midaba thamo somdana dene ngaso kewe thama chiwa somdo mare kewe kiji niba ne kiji gi ngaso meba kiji re shindu digi phonya digi ngaso chiwe chida shinji chola tha nyeru thigo re dine di midaba thamo somdana wa penna gane dilla somdana dene ngaso any misidi thama chiwe gimsengi dungal sammare kejik marari shindu chiwe choto tha nyeru dhugore. Dine samladana, ani nganzi misi dila chidang hide meba mase, dine kejik marari yang, nganzi misi chashi kejik rari yang, kejik chik yang, hiden jewe nesu thungu mare, karasan kejik rari shindu chiwala tha nyeru dhugado. Penna kande rela na, dagi nijingi kibu kangsang, sotogi niba tha chebe nijingi kibu kangsang na dengendi, dine soto niba tangsa dila, Tidona, then go chilo ne tune sunde, combarre shindu, chiwala tanya, Korangi she, Sojala tanya near Dugara, then Nazi Missy did the Jibujiare Tamachiwa Tamara, Mase, Kijik relation, the Missy Chashes or Dugore, the Kijik and also Meba, Nazi Nikune, Nazi Missy, Kijik relation to Dugore, Nazi Dengala Dena, Missy Koran, Kijik relation to Dugoramato. Nanzu dedi gosu misi mato baje maji baje ne degwa mare nanzu ni khudu gosu misi de maji baje ne degwa mare nanzu ni khune dengala dene misi khora kiji re shin ngalsa tan me baje ne den so do gora dene jidi dene thama chiwa ton ma se dada ni kiji chi ge ngalso me ba kiji re shin de chiwala nyer do de somla dana dene dagi tsamba di 정강 ne dene dene sosala chibadang Tido the comparison to time near the Chibareso. Or did with me, without Hamara Samdana? Didn't Nanzi Missy Hajangi, he gave a name, but Hungary asked.
And then that was the method of meditating or practicing on the what we call the grosser level of impermanence, thinking about the death and the uncertain time of the death. And that will, if we meditate well on that, then it will certainly make us feel unhappy with our life and bring some sadness. And then if you talk about the subtle level of impermanence, then this is the way, not just thinking about the death and then the uncertain time of death, but when we say the certain level of impermanence, and there is from the very moment that you are born, you have already been taken closer to the death by what we call the messenger of the Lord of Death, Yamaduta or Shinjiponya in Tibetan. So in this way, then not just we can understand that not just our whole life is untrustworthy, we cannot trust our life, but each moment of our life is actually untrustworthy, and that makes us feel sadness about the life. And for example, no matter whether you are sleeping or you are just sitting, you are working, whatever you do, our lifespan is just keep exhausting moment by moment. It is not like that. When you are sleeping, your lifespan also just stop there, not going to be exhausted anymore, not like that. From the very moment of your life, you are born, each the next moment already started to exhausting your life, and then it says from the very moment of you are born, then starting from that very moment, you have been already started to be taken to the closer to the death by the what we call the messenger of the Lord of Death. So if we think in this way, then that will make us understand that each moment of our life is also something that is making us sad, not something that is pleasing us. But so this is what we call the way of meditating on the subtle level of impermanence.
Olas. Ti ndiga su dini nga su tiga su midaba di thara ni dowa. Thara ni nane dini tso di kare sana rakba di tso re sungre. Kasi midaba di rakba di mena midaba thawa chibu di dunga nimba kheba yamara. Kare ndiga su tangbur rakba di midaba di samlo tani kheba di dunga rakba thong sona thawa di ini rakbi midaba di tha nyeru dogo ara. Kimsen di shina dini thawa midaba di dunga thongo ara. Di mayi na thawa midaba imba tangi dunga nimba kheba yamara karsana. Sangye ki namgyal kijig re shindu kijig jigo ara ine gyun sebe midaba yamara di nashin sangye ku yang kijig re shindu kijig jigo ara de hine yang ine gyun sebe midaba yamara o di dada ngana so misi kijig re de dungal imbe gyun garatana thama de dungal ra thama de dungal indu kosu dine dade kijig re shindu thame dungal de na dewa yara dine kijig thama de dine dungal imba chago ara dini dungal thara nyegi nane tsodi dungal mida thara nyegi nane tsodi mida baragwa di tsore sungre.
So it is taught that primarily when we talk about the two different kinds of impermanence, the grosser level and a subtle level, then it says the grosser level is the most important thing that we should understand, because that is what we're talking about, the suffering. And then, as I said, the end of our life is the death. No one is free from death as long as you are born in samsara. Therefore, we say we are not free from suffering. And then when we understand that the end of our life, no matter how happy life we are leading, the end of it is death, then we know that the subtle level of impermanence also is suffering, because it takes to you to the at the end of your life, moment by moment, instant by instant, like that, otherwise just the moment by moment impermanence of the moment by moment is not itself. We cannot say it's suffering all the time. For example, even the primordial wisdom of the Buddha is also impermanence, and then the Rupakaya form of the Buddha is also impermanent, but they don't have the exhaustion of the continuity. So it is not something, the moment by moment itself is suffering, but somehow when we think about the end of our life, which is death, then ever since we are born, every moment is taking us towards that the moment, the end of life, which is death. Therefore, we say therefore, then we said that every moment of our life is suffering. But as I said, it doesn't necessarily mean every moment of everything is suffering. For example, as I said, the moment, every instant, the moment of the Rupakaya Buddha form and the moment of the omniscient wisdom of the Buddha are impermanent. They are changing moment by moment, but they are not something suffering.
Tarbe devadi midaba redi ine rigin sebi midaba yamara midaba rakwadi yamara ko zedwa yamara devadi tarbe devadi ngato pena kewe thama chi lavra diro tarbe devadi dini kichi jigbe midaba dara ine gin zedwa yamara ko o din za dini ngodo gena la sonda dini seba mebechir takba shegen jeba yin songdo
so
devadi midaba redi ine gin sebi midaba mare sonda 균 세야 말에 디인상 딱바래 라는 디그리 송도와 문에다 딱바다 말아 어디 인디니 랑괴 미다바데 요 말아 어디 인자들이 갑들다 미다바데 둥알 레세 미다바데 그래 또 랑괴 미다바데 소레도 rigin se dwedi dungal redo pena kewe tama shi labzu gosu
So
din zadini din di ke din delwe dine keji 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 me meda badi yang dungal chago ara yi kewe nesu tungo ara
so that's why it is said in the Api Samaya Alankara or Ngoto again in Tibetan, it is says, since there is no end of the pleasure of liberation, even it is moment by moment changing, but it's not. We don't call it suffering. Therefore, it could also be called as something permanent. That's what is said in the Abhisamaya Alankara. The reason is because our happiness, whatever we experience in samsara, it keeps changing, and the very end of our life is death, which is suffering, not pleasure. And then each moment of our life is taking us closer to that end, which is death and which is suffering. Therefore, everything that is compounded in samsara, we say is suffering. But it doesn't necessarily mean everything that is changing momentarily is suffering. As it is said in the Abhisamaya Alankara that since the end of pleasure in liberation or nirvana is not something that is exhausted, is inexhaustible. Let's say inexhaustible. Therefore, it could be also called something permanent. The pleasure of, even though it is impermanent, but since the pleasure of nirvana is something inexhaustible, therefore it could also be called permanent.
oh las tene indi gosu da ragwe midabadi midaba ina dungal ingo gure se midabadi din so ragwe midabadi so redo din da ragwe midabadi dungal inza dine dedan delwe thawe midabadi yang dungal chago ara din da dine o midaba 타로 다나드는 거지 미다바 타모시는 대등기드니 뒤지기 동안 미다바 타모시기라 디다다 미다바 타슈디드니 무슨도 파바마도 무슨도 또 두고 말아 디다드니 켜버디지 동안 타슈디 파바마도 또 두고 말았어 자기 아니 부 락틀레잖아 나도 맞어버디 그래 켜버디지 동안 타모더라 드니 부디 미글 선어 미다바 더버려서리 켜버디지 동안 타슈디 아니 무슨 파바 무슨도 식투그라 어떠네 인자 디켜버디지 미다바 타모디 켜버디지 동안 이미 괜찮은 거라 라고는 될 되라고
So as we know, the real suffering is the grosser level of impermanence, and the reason why we also call the subtle level of impermanence is suffering is because it is related with the grosser level of suffering, because it keeps changing your life and eventually it takes you to the death. And therefore, the more subtle impermanence you realize, then you realize the subtle point of the all-purposive suffering. And then the most ultimate subtle the all-purposive suffering could be understood only by those Arya beings, not by us. As I said earlier, the example is like having a piece of hair on your palm and having that same piece of hair in your eye. But nevertheless, when we understand the very certain level of impermanence of our life, that will make us to understand the more subtle level of the all-purposive suffering.
Oh, las tene inda tene Sangye chumden degi midabwe tashi songro kewe tamachi dandalaba nasi tene sakwe tamase ngato nor longchu di yang ini nor longchu di oni kaze sana yang sakwe tamadi tene sebe tajen re namyang seya meba nor longchu saya midwa tene nor longchu kaze sana yang ji tamchi tama sebe tajen re tene dewe tama dhala songre ngato nyen nidu dang to togo 년도 라서가 정말 가지 되네요. 이 정말 되는 담아 달게 되잖아요. 오다가는 시들은 가서 토에 담아 롱 송래. 양나더니 강바야 찍나? 찍세 상마데 말 롱에 마 게야게 되네. 타제데 타디 아니 길도에마도 강바 찍는 남면 길에메 바지 강바 따네요 말아. 어드니 이제 가서 상계기들이 미다고 타시 했어. 진짜들은 미다고 타시디 손으로 단지 러브 미다고 또 송도
So that's why Buddha taught what we call the four stream of impermanence. And that's related more with the grosser level of impermanence. And then the four examples are that he said, the end of the birth is death. So therefore, as long as we are born, and then there's no way we can go without being died. So that death is, as soon as we are born, it's certain that we're going to die. So because that's the end of the life. And then second one is, he says, the accumulation, the end of accumulation is exhaustion. So no matter how much wealth you collected, you accumulated with great effort, one day they all will or be used out or exhausted, finished, and there's no other end than that. So that's why it says the end of accumulation is exhaustion. Okay, and then Buddha, the third one, he says the end of meeting is separation. So no matter how many loved ones you meet in your life, your relatives, your friends, and so forth, those people that you love them and they love you, but the end of meeting them is to be separated from them. There's no other way. Once you meet someone, that after you meeting them, the only ending is to be separated from them. And this is what he said. And then another one is how high it is. The end of the highness is a collapse or fall down, which means if you build a very high, very tall building, once you are done building that, and then now the end, one day it will collapse or it will fall down. There's no other ways. And then there's no way that you can build any building that will never fall down. So he said the fourth stream of the impermanence, the end of birth is death, the end of accumulation is exhaustion, and the end of meeting is the separation, and the end of building up is falling down. And then actually when he taught these four things, he was mostly related with the grosser level of impermanence.
Oh, las. Tene jadi gaso ngaso tene to nyen dang to bo cheti gaso ngaso di kibu sorgo do. Tene teba di dalwe thaji yimba de shena di gaso to nyen do teba di dalwe thaji yimba shede tene thama dal de di ngaso hi kyo do sorgo do. Namgyal ngaso tene nyen dang to bo teba la gawa yore. Nyen dang to bo dal de gaso hi kyo sem kyo do. Tene ngaransa samje tene that nyen dang to bo teba di ngaso la gogo yore. Nyen dang to bo dal de di ngaso gogo yamara. Mune jidi tene thama tene nyen dang to bo dal ne dalwe tene hi kyo ne su di nyen dang to bo teba di gi rangshin ro mare. Khoni nyen dang to bo dale yobadi dalwa di tebe chuni ro di. Sangye sunye de ro. Tebe thama dal se di thama yi dal ne hi kyo gi ne su di the ne gaya gi ne su ji ro. Di gi chuni ro. The ne gaya gi ne su di thama dal ge chujin ro ko. Yin di go su di nyen dang to bo dan teba di thama dal ge chujin re. Yin da di thama dal ne dungan nyong ya bo di the ne gaya ne su di gi chuni ro ko. 나랑서 디니 소소 체네 섬로당 거로 어디 인자들이 문에 섬로당 가서 타마 이 교회 내수디 당부 이 가야게 내수 되거라는 게 되니 신이라 괜히 달도 매봐라 드는 가서 쳐봐지고 얘네 달와디 먹었어야 되니 괜히 소소 체합니다 사실 체네 가야디 연구는 되니 달네 이 교회 내 당도 랑고거든 괜히 카틀 다 매라 제단에 뭐에서 디디레디 히네 가서 디 소소 체네 섬당거든 체바데 야고레 섬고도 달와디 독자레 섬고도 뭐에서도 그래 달외 독자데 체베 야고데게 연구하라 체베 야고되면은 달외 독자데 영사야 말해 어디 인자 뭐네 지데 가서 체네 기버트라야 야버디 달네 동안 영야 야버디게 되니 그런 게 진이라 어디 인자들 상계 소야데 가르래라나 체네 기버 영야디 달네 동안 영야기 랑신레 섬다.
So usually when we meet someone we loved ones, someone we love, then it gives us a pleasure, happiness. We feel very happy. And then when we separated from them, then we feel unhappy. We feel a kind of sadness. And then usually we want the happiness of meeting our loved one, and we don't want the suffering of parting or separating from the loved one. But actually in reality, there's no way we can separate them, because they are kind of inseparable. First moment from the meeting them, the separation is in the reality of meeting them. Without meeting them, there's no separation. Therefore, there's no way that we can separate them. So if you want the happiness, a joy, or pleasure that is brought to you by meeting your loved one, then also you have to accept the suffering, unhappiness that is brought to you from the separation of them. Because these two things, the happiness of meeting loved one and the suffering of separating from loved one, is something that we cannot separate, because this is one in the nature. As long as you have this, you want the joy and happiness of meeting your loved one, your friends and relatives, and also you have to accept the suffering and then the sorrow and sadness that you experience when you separate from them, because they are one in the nature and there's something inseparable. That's what Buddha said when he said the end of meeting is separation.
Oh, that's the thing. Tibetama Dalware, Sidikazini, Tebadi, Dalu Chini, Chijinde, the Teba and Darwani Chetan Yomara, or the Teddy, the one Yongona, the one Yongadi, Dalni, the one Yongagi, the Rangshire. Pay did over the name of the Sane, no longer saw the Gazon of the people through the door. Thomas said to the Gazan, one through the door. Did you didn't Kuni Saya de Sambo in Badam, said to Tuja in Bedrin, Kuni Nesu Sosomare, Thomas Sene Dungan Yuadi, Sane de Vanu Chinides. Tini Sane de Vanu to go, Sene Dungan the Mugos Ayomare, Sane de Vanu the Ling, Tandulana, then Sebi Dungal Liang, down the Langogres. When you cut the Yamares. You then this in Carrera, Subway any Tamjedi, Dalwe Chinire, the Chinidi, Katal Yamara, or the any Samba Tamadi, Sebi Tajinam, Sebi Chiniji, but the Hagosona, any Samba the young Higyo in the Tongra. Tinsan, any Kabadi Miravara Waladeni, any Kabadi Dunga.
So
Higyo in the sea, but the Kabadi Dunga.
So in the same way, when we said, meeting loved ones give you pleasure, happiness, and in the very nature of that, also the unhappiness, the sorrow, and sadness of separating from them is there already. So you cannot separate them between the joy of meeting loved one and the sorrow or sadness of separating from someone. So because they are one in the nature, therefore we cannot separate there. So if you want one of them, then you have to accept both of them. In the same way, when we say the end of accumulation is exhaustion, that means, again, usually when we accumulate our wealth, money, so forth, we may feel so happy. But when they're exhausting, they're exhausted, where we become out of any wealth, then we feel very unhappy. But again, same. Once you have accumulated, then the end of accumulation is no other ways, but it's just exhaustion, the finish. Therefore, then from this understanding of the grosser level of the impermanent, then you can also understand the subtle level of impermanence. So here the point is that we should understand that the joy that brings by meeting our loved one, and also the joy that is brought to us by accumulating wealth and so forth, is pervaded by suffering. the natural suffering in reality, which is we call the all-purpose suffering. Therefore, they are not free from suffering. And then if we understood that, then we are starting to understand the grosser level of the all-purpose suffering, and that's the important point here.
Hola, Tito Dini, Poetama Suma said the Antinashidova. Tito Dini, Midabe Tashi Midarabadi Sondana, Dini Korwe Punsun Soba Karena, Samadi, Gubetajin, Punsun Soba Kadigaratan, Gubadre Sonata. Dini didn't Korwe Punso Sama, Gubagi Ta Madiba, Chigan Yomares.
So, same way with the two other things, like when we say the end of the building tall is falling down or collapsing down. If we think this way, then all things, all the samsaric pleasure, the spending pleasure of samsara, the end of this is nothing but declining, or decreasing, and then one day it will be finished. So all the samsaric pleasure or the perfection in samsara, everything that is not free from being decreased. Therefore, we could understand in this way. If we think that way, then we could understand that all the things that we think is good in the samsara pleasure, perfection, whatever you think is good, is not free from being declined or decreased down. And that's the end of the everything in samsara.
Hola, Tedawedene Midabe Tashi de la Tene, any Sibi Punso Tamje, Taman Gube Tajimba, La Ishiki, any Samla Tangasu, Sibi Punso Sama Latine, Hikyo, and Yesu Tungura, Sibi Punso Tamje Tarum Gubeta, Guban, Sibi Punso Kanga Gang, Tarum Gube Madiba Chigang, maybe Sul Samadandi, Midabe Tashi Latene, any Sibi Punso Tamjalada, Hidemidu. Lokiamidu, Sanadini, he gave a Nesudi, Simki Tortugre, then Simkolana Yungre, or did a Junadi, any Midabara Dene, Tini, Duji Dunga Raba, Comsulre.
So, relying on this four method of meditation on samsaric suffering, which we call the four extreme of impermanence, then you will understand that all the perfection in samsara, all pleasure in samsara is not free, or they are bound. They are bound by the declining or decreasing or exhaustion. Therefore, if you have clear understanding of this, the situation of samsaric pleasure, perfection, then it will make you feel a little bit, because you will get the certainty. If you gain certainty in this way, then it will make you feel sad about this, what we call the samsaric pleasure. Then it is said that this is the teaching or method of meditation on the grosser level of the suffering, relying on the grosser level of impermanence.
Hola, Tidwedene, Midarabala Dene, Kavadi Dunga Rawa Sortuna, in Digazu, Tama, any Midawe Tashi, give it Tama Seba, in a Trebe Tama Dalwa, Sabe Tamas, oh Seba, give it Tama Chua, Toy Tama Longa Tam Maimba, any Kidini, Kijing relation to Chiwala Tanya Dogore, in Niena Dogo Tedine, Tebi. Di kiji nibane sundedini darwala keji thare nyer dugore di nashi dini sabbe kiji nibane sundedini sebala tha nyer dugore o di indi gosu midagbe tashi midagbe shigi tajen yimba damase kiji riri shindu eni midagbe tha dela tha nyer dugiyo badi dini tawe midagwa samladana dini kebadi ji dungan thama thong dugore di gosu Sibi Punzo Tamja Tarum Gubi Tajin Bamase, Tadani, Gubala Nyor Choba, Kijig Nalsa Meba, Gubala Nyor Choba in Sula Somladana, Deni Mida Tamola Dene, Kabadi Dungal Tomaton to Grace.
So, this is the method of realizing the grosser level of the all-purpose suffering, relying on the grosser level of impermanence. So, once you have understanding this quite well, and then then you can think, just not just the end of our birth is death, but from the very moment of the birth, you are approaching closer and closer to the death each moment. And the same way, very moment from you meet someone, the next moment is already taking you to closer to the separation. And the same way, the very moment of accumulating your wealth, the next moment is taking you to the closer and closer to the exhaustion of the wealth, and so forth. Therefore, if you train very well there, then you will get certainty of that all samsaric pleasure and then perfection in samsara are unreliable, untrustworthy. Therefore, you will get the sadness about them, and then this will take you to the because you have the understanding of not just the end of the birth is death, but actually each moment is taking you closer and closer to the death. Therefore, you will understand every moment is not free from the suffering, and then each moment of our life is pervaded by what we call the all-pervasive suffering. And then this is the way and method that we will understand the meaning of the all-pervasive suffering.
Hola, stiruda. Oh, 치와당 달와당 세베 타진 임바도 마세 다다 네케지 머르리 신두 애니 치와당 세바당 드라발라 타니루 니루 도임비 애니 미다바 타모디 미다바라바 데단 텔네 상도다나 애니 시베 푼소 탐제라 기지경 시베 푼소 강라양 기지경 히든 제사메바 동그레 손데다 기지모 지경 딘로 히든 제미도 강라양 히든 제미도 기증마 지경 히든 제미도 이 동대 것도 되니 나마 레경 아니 히교에서 동그래 손에
So not just that end of our life's death, but if you think thoroughly that each moment right after our birth we're approaching or getting closer and closer to death, then that will make us feel that there's nothing really in the samsara, no matter what, all the samsaric pleasure and all the perfection in samsara, there's nothing that you can rely on. But not only nothing, but also there's not even a moment that you can just even for a moment we cannot rely on, because they're changing every moment, and then that will really makes you feel very sad about the samsaric pleasure and perfection.
Hola, stiruvedini sibe punzo 강라양 기지경 히든 제사메바 아니 미다와 타모 담발라테네 통선아 지갑소드니 sibe punzo 탐제 히교에 내수 통 된다 켜버드지기 동을 참아통 될 때는 닝기 콩 리베 띵니 교와 중나 두지 미다 참을라 때니 두지 동을 참어 검술지래서
So then if by understanding that there is nothing in samsara, no matter what whatsoever, there's nothing that you really trust or you really rely on even for a moment, then it will make you feel really renounced from every every aspect of samsara pleasure and perfection. And then if you have the renunciation from the very bottom of your heart and from the very marrow of your bone, and then that is the moment that you really understood or experienced the certain level of the all-pervasive suffering.
Hola. 디 애니 미다 바라테니 켜버드지 동을 시그레스야다. 미다시나 동을 시에서야디. 애니 툴디다 버레.
So this is the way when it is taught that if you understand permanence, you will also understand suffering, and this is the way how you understand suffering, by understanding the impermanence.
다 미다시나 당메 시그레스로. 다 미다시나 당메 시그레스야디 거래람나 가서 다 세야디. 너도 애니 저기 동을 덴버기 드니 넘버 시 드나라 똥바도 당메스니 니도 동바다 당면 세야디 디가서 당아서 아니 택바 멤버당 투몽도 전에 세디가서 디가서 동바다 당면이가 강사 당면 시고래 디가서 동바 세야디 동리를 드시게 해야 말해 년태당 투몽 전에 세디가서 디가서 동바 세야디 그러잖아 강사기 다디 풍볼레 로스 두려 말해서 근데 풍볼레 로스 아니 강사기 다 두바 메바디 동바스라래 풍보 그런 강사기 다기 랑신도 마두바들 다 메바스라 근데 니가디 강사 담에 시고래
So the next it says, if you know suffering, then you know selflessness. So what it means is that, you know, when we talk about the truth of noble truth of suffering, we said there are four aspects, which are impermanence, suffering, emptiness, and selflessness. So we have already done the two of them, and next two, we have selflessness and emptiness. When we talk about this teaching, especially the emptiness in the common way of the Hinayana, we talk about explain about this teaching, the emptiness here in the common way with the Hinayana or Shavakayana, then it doesn't talking about the emptiness, but it is both of them. When we say the selflessness and the emptiness, we're talking about the selflessness of person. Out of two selflessnesses, we're mainly talking about the selflessness of person. So then what it means by two words, empty and selfless, is that it's when we say there is no separate self, then what we call the five skandhas or five aggregates, this is what it means, empty. And then when we say the self, the five skandhas or the five aggregate itself is not self, this is what we call the selflessness. So both selflessness and empty here are explained for the selflessness of person when we teach this in the common way of Hinayana.
Hola. Tini dini ngaso midabana dungal sena dangme shigre selida dame badela dangme shigre selida tishetela dame basadi dini takji rawan chendu 강사 딱지 라원전도 두바 요마레스 디시기레 송라 이거라서는 미다바시 동아라바시디 아니 기지기지기 지고 임바다 레뉴기 상황 임바디 생기도와 어디엔다더니 딱바다 지고다 라원전도 두베 다메바디 하고 그래서네 그래서는 풍부 딱진이니 풍부디 강사기 닥시라 디디드니 강사기 닥시 딱진이니 풍부디 레뉴기 상황 임바 기지기 지고 미다바 임바 디시디 딱바 마임바 라원전 마임바 드니 풍부인데 가서 누마 본바라 드니 직부 마임바 시기도 어디든지 딱바다 직부다 라원전도 두베 다음에 받아 시기래서 디다 동아시나 당메 시기래서 디시게당 지들
The one way of explaining when we say if you know the suffering, then you will also know selflessness, is that because here selflessness means we said a self which is permanent, partless, and autonomous self. Takjik rawang jengi dak in Tibetan we say that. I think there's different way of translation in English also, but one way is this. We say a self that is permanent, partless, and autonomous, or you can also say the independent self. So we will understand there is no something called self which is permanent, partless, and autonomous after knowing the suffering. The reason is because we say impermanent, you know, this the what we call the contaminated aggregates of klesha is come from the klesha and karma, and then this is not free from suffering. It is pervaded by all suffering. Therefore, when you understand that very well, then also you will understand there is no self that is permanent, partless, and autonomous self.
Hello.
What is science?
Hello.
Oh, Sangye.
고고데.
Lasso.
Hello.
Gogudu.
고고데.
Gogudu.
알레레. 올라서 뒤로래. 되네 똥바도 다음에 봐서 돼. 똥바도 다음에 봐서 돼. 강사 당면라 시고래. 어디인가더니 뒤로에 되니 미다 둥알 똥바 다음에 어디 시디 시나 되니 둥알 넘버 디시 고니 되니 둥알 덴바 디 라 섬라다나 되니 켜버 두지 둥알 용수도 바통도 그래 될 때네 되니 될 때네 되니 코르발라 이중에 이중 남아 그래 되니 될 때네 터버 되니 길로 남아 끼도 그래 소리 단다다 이중 양다바 끼도 그래 소리
So it says, yes, the two of them, which is emptiness and selflessness, are both explanation of the selflessness of person here. So through these four aspects of the truth of suffering, which are impermanence, suffering, emptiness, and selflessness, then it says you will, if you have a thorough and complete understanding of this four aspects of the suffering, then you will understand the subtle level and then completely the meaning of what we call the all-pervasive suffering. Hello, can you hear me? Hello? Yondan, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, because something happened. Okay, anyway, then good. Let me keep talking. I'm not done yet. Then the purpose of having understanding the complete understanding of the all-pervasive suffering is then it will make you to have the genuine sense of renunciation from samsara and also genuine sense of longing for liberation. In short, it will say then you will have the perfect renunciation from samsara. Okay, I'm done.
알레 올라서
So that dungalgi dampanyo tikda tantarana.
올라서 되기들이 다 둥을 아니 둥을 덴바기 단 신이당 둥을 덴베 넘버디 디레 단 이바데 군중 덴바레
So I think we are done here in a concise way of explaining the definition of the noble truth of suffering and also the characteristic of the noble truth of suffering. And now next is the noble truth of origin.
올라서 군중 덴베 신이디 그래라나 랑데 둥을기 규르베 sakje ngobo kunjung de besinire
So the definition of the noble truth of the origin or the characteristic of it says any contaminated phenomena that can produce the truth of suffering. That is definition of the truth of origin.
올라서 띠네 kunjung dembe 신시디 그래라나 kunjung dem바들라 레던 녀몽바니 여러
So the example, if you ask what is really the truth of origin, then it is divided into two, which are karma and klesha.
올라서 띠네 kunjung dem바들라 다 레던 녀몽바니 여래 오 디디네 레던 녀몽바니 낭네야다 녀몽바들라다 녀몽바는 것도 세외 녀몽 두 여러 세외 녀몽 두기 낭네들이 경다 어레 또 녀몽 두여레 Nyumung dogi nane so de karla na marik badang dine seba nidre sore. Seba sana tosharo.
So when we say the truth of origin is divided into two categories, which are karma and klesha, and among the klesha, there are many different categories, and primarily there are 6 of them, which we call the root kleshas. And then out of 6 of them, again, the most powerful one is what we call the ignorance and craving, or craving is another name of a desire or attachment.
Ola. Tanga da tawe nyumung da chidang nyumung la da namdang mangbu yore. Dine tawe nyumung da nyewe nyumung sene. Ani mangbu yore. O di nang ni da nga sa danda chidang nyumung se di kadijila gugu de la na nyumung ba sa di gangshi gyu la kye na simgyu rabdu mashiwar chebe chile jengi simjung yoro. Di la nyumung ba sa. Nyumung ba sinyi shana di sha.
So generally, there are many different categories of klesha mind, which is afflicted emotion in English. Klesha is Sanskrit word. So usually in English we say afflicted emotions. And then even though there are many different categories of klesha or afflicted emotion, primarily we said there are root kleshas and secondary or klesha and upaklesha in Sanskrit. And the definition or characteristic of this klesha mind is, it says, anything by having that in our mind, which makes our mind unpeaceful, which disturb our mind, and then that is the definition of klesha mind. So this is also one of the mental factor, which is senjung in Tibetan, which is mental factor. So any mental factor that disturb your mind, that destroy the peacefulness of your mind, that is what we call the afflicted emotion or klesha in Tibetan. No, in Sanskrit.
Ola. O di da nga sa nyumung ba di rangyu la 아니 기버던게 심기로도 마시워 지그래 근데 녀몽 그런 게 질레 그래요래서는 녀몽 바디 아니 심기를 깨서나 되는 거랑 셈디 겨월 죽발라 고가 그래 아니 미기에 저와라 오메도 죽어 지그래 소래
So since the definition or characteristic of our the klesha or afflicted emotion is any mental factor that makes our that destroy our peace of mind, then the function, it says the function of the klesha is, once we have this kind of mental factor in our mind or mind stream, which we call klesha, then it will stop you from entering into the virtuous action, and it will make you to engage uncontrollably, without any control, to engage in the non-virtuous action. And this is the function of klesha.
Hola, ti any nyamong bechilere.
And that's the function of klesha.
Di indigo so derive the nyamong ba di keve rimba kandere lana. Keve rimba di the dambu ngaran so any marik badigi pungbogi netul thongala tiba chigre. Tela dine pungbogi netul chijilo do shoba chigre so. Maso marik badala ni chagwa. Mishibe marik badan chijilo do toba marik ba ni chagwa. Dambu mishibe marik badigi pungbogi netul tip ne matonga chagwa. Nipa dine chijilo do shoba marik badigi pungbogi netul chijilo do Sangwa, Dewa, Takba, Dadu Thunga, Diso, Chijilo to Singidwa. O Dini, Marikba Rimba Niyore, Marikba Rimba Dambo di Mishibe Marikbare, Digi Pumbe Nesul Tonga Digre Sore. Nipa Digi Pumbe Nesul Chijilo to Shubajigre Sore.
So, if you ask the process of having this klesha in our mind stream, then it says initially start from the ignorance. And when we say ignorance, again, there are 3 categories of ignorance. Ignorance of not knowing, and then ignorance of viewing wrong way, or taking things in the wrong way. So therefore, the klesha, all the klesha will start from the ignorance. First, when we first through the ignorance of not knowing. So it means without knowing the ultimate reality of our aggregates, skandhas, then the second function of the ignorance, which takes our aggregate in wrong way as something pure, as something permanent, as something in the nature of happiness and so forth. So these are the two different functions of ignorance. The first one is we call the ignorance of not knowing, and the second one is the ignorance that takes things in a false way or in wrong way.
Hola, tiene 풍보라 명네 나랑신기 좀 생기도 와. tiene 디 치질로도 봐. 풍보에 넣을 치질로도 따고 알아. 다도 생기도 와.
So
tiene 당딜 되네. 당신 될 되네 달라 차고게. 달라 차벌라 되네 다기 대발라 차고게. tiene 머리박이 차고게기도 와. 다기 대발라 차벌라 되네 다기 대와게기 되네. 긴 왕보당 율라 차고게. 어디로 되네. 머리발라 되네 차고 뉴문 계기를 했어.
And then second klesha is attachment or desire or craving. And then since the ignorance takes as something self where there is not self actually, but it takes something mistakenly as self, then we want happiness for that self. Therefore, we have this craving. The second after ignorance, we have the attachment or the self, the craving or desire, a desire of happiness for that self, and the desire to all the causes that can produce happiness for the self. And this is how the attachment is generated through the ignorance.
Hola, piruvedene dagi devala cha dagi deva dubegi kin wangbo dang yul la cha dela dene dene wangbo dang yul trebala dene dene rangi lui nga yi sungyo gone ngarangi deva dube chidu dene lega samgre esungada lunga gi lega chigiro dene le saya gozugo nyumong dene le saya gozugre.
So after becoming attached to happiness of that self, then also we have attachment of the object of the self, which is our object, and then also the faculties, and then between this, in order for us to accumulate the causes of this happiness, then we accumulate karma or action. Karma is again Sanskrit word action. Then relying on the kleshas, then karma is generated or accumulated.
Hola, digasu dangasu dagi devala cha sedigasu teni dagi dewa de sedigi devala chana teni sedigi dewa dube chidu ngaso teni sochaba majimba lemba lasoba lunga yisung goni migewa chudi jigiro.
So when we say we become attached to the happiness of self, then for example, if you are
sedigi devala chana
if we attach to this the happiness or pleasure of this life, then we engage in many different negativities in order for us to receive the happiness of this life. For example, we engage in taking life of others or killing, and also we engage in taking what is not given, which means like robbery or theft and so forth. So all sorts of negative karma we engage in order for us to achieve some kind of happiness for this life, because we are attached to the happiness of this life.
Hola, yang sedi midaba imba samlo dane dene sedi devala ningbo midu sam dene kewa chimagi da dewa dugo gudu samdi dene kewa chimagi dokam gi lada mi devala shinjage na di togu gudu samna di chidu dene kewa dugura des sakje gi kewa dugura sanam chatung gi kewa dugura di chidu dene sudim sungure chimbatangure kewa chima dene ngonto gi luden tube chidu sudim sung kewa chima longju chimbo yongya chidu chimbatang kewa chima dene kor punsu soba dang siji punsu soba tube chidu soba gom la soba jido dene sunam chatung kewa dugura.
So if you understand that the pleasure of this life is impermanence, and there's not really purpose of accumulating the causes of for this life, then if still you are attached to the happiness of next life of the higher realm, such as the pleasure of human or God's realm of the desire realm, then you engage in the virtuous action, which is we call the contaminated virtuous action. That is in the harmonies of accumulated merit, such as you keeping your vows, morality, discipline, and then you are practicing generosity and so forth, and that is the cause of having a good life in the next life. For example, if you are attached to have a good physical body, or if you would like to have a perfect looking one, or if you would like the perfect wealth in your next life in the higher realm. When we say higher realm here, basically we're referring to the human and the gods of desire realm. And then this is what we call the virtuous action. Yes.
Hola. Telegia this is some the ship sabotana. Then it gave want to the come gilhadam me kevalene deni to be ending it devatum and the animo midu. Karzana didn't to be ending is Shawan redo. The end didn't do Dungal redo, Dungal Bahago. That Nangi thing is in devatum gudu. Samlodana, thing they were delaying a tower. That the end was thing is in the one you come goma to come the Sume come with Hala Kegora. Or didn't Sukam the Sume King Hala Kene to be in Della Temegova. Nangi thing is in the one young go do something gasu. Then the dish do young thing is in Gomne Mio Le Sagra. Things that or Mio Le Sagre.
And then there's virtuous action, non-virtuous action, and there's one more action which we call the unmoving or unshakable action, miyoba in Tibetan, which is actually which is accumulated through meditation practice or samadhi. So if you become someone who really understands that even you are born in the higher realm of desire realm and have plenty of the pleasure that is available in the higher realm of desire, like human realm and also God's realm, such as like perfect wealth, perfect entourage, and everything. But still, these are not free from suffering. If you understand that, because these are still under the power of desire realm. Therefore, they are ultimately not free from suffering. If you understand that, and then you are not attached to those kind of pleasure or happiness of the human realm and the Deva realm of the desire realm. But if you think that now I should work or I should put effort for getting the inner peace, which we call the pleasure of samadhi, then you have to work for those causes that will make you take birth in the higher realm of which we call the Deva realms of the form and formless, or Rupa Dhatu, Arupa Dhatu in Sanskrit. So in order for you to receive there, if you are born there, then you don't have to rely on any the 5 qualities of desire realm. You are free of them, but you have plenty of inner pleasure, which is produced through samadhi. Therefore, if you are working for that, then you do the samadhi practice, and that is we call the unshakable action or the unmoving action.
Hola. Tini because the thing of the lady la sum chasa. Sonam Mainbele, Sonam Gile, Mioele. Sonam Mainbele, the city deola chana, Tinis Numong Rabake, Delatin, Sonam Mainbele Sagdoa. That city dewa the Nimbo Mevashe, Kivachimi deola, Kivachimi Dukumgi deola chana, Tinis Sonam Gile to Gua. That Kivachima Dukumgi dewa the Anthony, Nimbo Mevatongne, Tini Kivachima Nangi, Tingi dewa Togo Samna. There Mio Le Sagidua. The Sunga de Dini, Kulong de Gare, Marik Badang, Toshala Dini, Sagidua. Or Tini in the Gosudini, that Sunam Giledam, Mio Leni, the Kivari, the Hine, Sajiki Gavara, the Sunam Chadin Gavara, Mother, Kore Gure, Kunjung Raha, Taratwe Gushamara, or Dinam Kora Gaji Gilera, the Kunjung.
So now we know there are 3 different kinds of the action, which are unwholesome action, wholesome action, and unmoving or unshakable action. Or you can also say same virtuous action, non-virtuous action, and unmoving or unshakable actions. So all three of them are motivated by the attachment and the ignorance. Therefore, all of them are included in the truth of origin. Because if you are attached to the pleasure of this very life, then you accumulated karma through unwholesome action. If you are free from attachment of being attached to this life, but is still attached to the joy of higher realm in the next life, first, if you are attached to the pleasure of human and the deva of desire realm, then you through that you will, in order to achieve that, then you do accumulate the wholesome action. And then, if you are attached to the pleasure of the form realm and then formless realm or rupa dhatu and rupa dhatu, then in order for you to receive or achieve that happiness, you accumulate unmoving or unshakable actions. But two of this usually we call that both the wholesome or virtuous action, but somehow they are, we call the contaminated wholesome action. They are not a cause that will lead to you liberation. They will give you the good result in samsara itself. Therefore, all three of these, the unwholesome action, wholesome action, and unshakable action, all of these three are included in the truth of origin.
Oh, las. Tiene que ser tan ato. O kunjung demba la le dan nyumo ba ni yore es da yesu de dire. Dire we de ne le dan nyumo be kunjung de la yang number shi yore.
So this is the way when I said there is two category of two category of the truth of origin. This is the way how when we say there is a klesha and there is a karma. And again, the truth of origin has four different aspects.
Ta kunjung number shi de gartana de kyu kunjung rabke ken dila kunjung number shi sonre.
So the four different aspects of the truth of origin is cause, origin. The third one has many different translations in English, so I'm just going to use one of them. In Tibetan we say rabke, and then one says strong producer. I think that's quite good. There's also different, and then three of them is, I think all translators use the same. Okay, first one is cause, second one is origin. If you understand Tibetan, gu kunjung, and the rabke is strong producer, SS. And then the last one is ken, condition. So these are the four aspects of the truth of origin.
Oh, las. Ta di ni ko se de nga to le dan nyumong ni yoro. Nyumong gi nang ne de sebadi kunjung zo de nyumong gi nang ne da sebadi de ni zo sha gi do.
So
Di
we know there is two different things in the origin of truth, which are karma and klesha. And among the klesha, again, the primary origin of suffering is the attachment or the desire or craving. We also have many words in Tibetan, like in a sepa. Sepa usually is translated as craving.
Hola. O sepa de dini. O dini jidi ko da le dang nyomong ni di any gyure kunjung re rabke re ken re sonra. O di re gi dini kunjung gi kheshe re tengwa re. Din da dini le dang nyomong di nang so sepa di chejin any kunjung gi number re kimsen gar re islam na rangde dungal gi ta yin be shir. Rangi debur gi be dungal yoye gi ta de din zang kunjung re yes.
So
Ma kunjung mare danga gyure yes. Gyu kunjung rabke kenra namba tangbo de gyure. Ta any gyuri ga le dang nyomong bam di nang ne so sepa de chejin any gyu namba inde then rangi debu dungal demba keji gi ta yin be shir.
So generally, the klesha and actions are taught through these four things which we call cause, origin, strong producer, and condition. And out of that, the craving is said to be the primary cause. And then the reason is, it says the craving is the primary cause because this is the root cause of one result, which is, this is I'm trying to translate literally from Tibetan word, which means Rangde means the result of self, which means result of the craving is nothing but the truth of suffering. Therefore, this is the root primary thing, because this is the root cause of the truth of suffering.
Hola. Ta kunjung se den de ra ra. Ta le de nyumong ji na ni to se ba di. Ini kunjung yang re so ra. Kunjung yin bi kim se gar re la na de ni rang de dungal len chi de mai ba yang du ke ba ji re so.
So, of course, again, the craving is also origin. Origin, in this way, I have to translate in different way. The Tibetan way is kunjung, which means the source of everything, from which everything comes, So then I can explain the way the teacher explained here. Origin, I'm not sure if it has the equivalent meaning of the Tibetan word. Kun means everything or all, jung means coming. So let's say cause and origin, or the source from where everything comes. So here the craving is also kunjung, or the source of everything, because it produces the suffering not only once, but it keeps producing the suffering again and again, and that's why it is also source of everything.
Hola. Ni da di ko da kunjung le de gar re la na. Ini le de nyumong ba di nang ni so se ba di. Ini kunjung re kim sen gar re la na di gi rang gi debu dungal chik sam mare dungal namdang mangbo ke gi res. Tiang len chik sam mare yang du ke gi res. Tiang sa dungal namdang mangbo ke ba tiang len chik sam mai ba yang du ke ba. Ti chane dini kunjung la wo res.
So the reason why second aspect of the truth of origin is called origin, or the source of everything, is because all the karmas and kleshas in general, and particularly the craving, produces many different kinds of suffering, not only one aspect of suffering, but various kind of suffering. And also it produces not only once, but it produces again and again many different kinds of suffering. Therefore, it's called the origin of everything, or the source of everything.
Oh, that's number shiba de gare kingi number re. The kingi number de shidi go so dini seba de so sungre sungre. Kimsan gar sana kin shidi go so gyu dam ba ngatu namgi ngatu gyu dam kin sin ni shegira. Never lembe gyu dam hinji jebe kin sin ni shegira. Tin de dini seba di kingi number shidi go so seba de so shigire. Then sebadi any rangde dungalgi gyutam maimba tenji jebe kenyang chigre yasur. Otne inda dene sebadi chejin. Kengi namba inde rangde dungalgi gyutam maze tenji jebe kenyang chigre yas. Tejina kengi namba asla.
And the fourth is we call the condition, and then again, all the kleshas and karma could be conditioned in general, particularly the craving is called the condition. And the reason is usually when we talk about a cause, and we say cause and condition, perpetuating cause and spontaneous or innate or co-emergent condition like that. So in this case, in order for us to have the suffering, and which is the result of craving, so craving acts not only like the primary cause, but also it acts like a condition to produce the suffering. Therefore, it's called the condition.
Oh, la sati da dene dela da any sebadi na the sangye gi do na la dene kingi number sungdi go su any chishi di marikba yang sung ya mare le yang sung ya mare sebadi so sung res. Di gimsen gar la sebadi gi den dambu ma so marikba dene le sa gira. Maribala tene le sauti gosu yang seba de gugare. Seba mena maribala chibuki le sautu mare. Odi maribala le saila roba seba gugare. Tindi seba mebala maribala chibuki le sautu mare. Tindi tangbo maribala le saila yang seba gugare. Ta maribala ki le saane le ki baksha namshiki tunda shagira. Namshiki tunda shaane dine le di nipa yaase ne dine tebu mingara. Tindi le ki nipa yaase parjibala yang seba de gugare. Pero shashana ngaso 70 bangze nala shasha de chu lenshir na tan matena nyugo kegi mara sabun kam ya shashana ta 70 niba ya se la kare lenshir che go gro o chedan de lenshir dabadi kare seba re so ngaso le sana yang seba gi de kulma majena tena ngara 70 la nyugo kegi niba yore di ine lenshir da matena nyugo kegi mi do pe diro le dila ngaso nemin kegi niba yena yang tene leisure do seba digi tene yang legi sabin nibadi ya seba majina tene le digi dubuke tu mare sun odin da marik be seba la tene le sa simbadi yang debu member jela yang gare seba digi kulma jago re odin di tene diga liji jigen re se dira le sa simbadi la yang seba jigen liji jibeki yang seba digi jago re di tene seba di 당보 레 펜버 제발랑 세바 구와레 레 펜버디 두버 제발랑 세바 구와레 진정 아니 당보당 타마니가라다 규 사우디 가서다 대부 민지 가서니까 세바 구와레 야스네 디엔자드니 지당 마르바양 군중레 레양 군중레디 이 나네드니 세바디 소샤고에디 그래서 당보 마르비 레 사라양 세바 구고레 마르비 레 사사와디 대부 민버 제발랑 세바 구와레스
So Buddha taught that primarily the craving or desire as a condition or co-emergent condition, what we call in the sutra, because the reason is even though all the karmas and kleshas are origin of suffering, but the craving acts primarily. For example, when at the beginning, initially, when the ignorance accumulate the karma, try to put the seed on the consciousness, then it cannot do by itself, by it alone itself. Also, when ignorance is accumulating that seed, ignorance needs support from the craving. Without the support of craving, the ignorance cannot accumulate any karma alone. Therefore, craving is there. So when the very cause was accumulating, the support of the cravings there, then once the seed of this that has been accumulated by ignorance with the support of craving is stored on the consciousness, and then in order for it to be ripened or mature, then again you need the support of the craving. Without the support of craving, then even if you have this the seed, it cannot be mature. For example, if you have a seed of something, and if you just keep it in your room without meeting all the necessary requirements, such as the moisture, the water, and so forth, and the seed, even it has the power, potentially even it has the power of producing the sprout out of it, but without having the support from those necessary conditions such as moisture or water, it will never produce any result out of that seed. In the same way, even you have this what we call the habitual tendencies that was accumulated by the ignorant with the support of craving on your mind, but still, if again you don't have the support from craving, then there's no way this habitual tendency, which is like a seed, will be in maturation. Therefore, for it to be mature, again it needs the support of the craving. Therefore, even though all the kleshas are origin of suffering, but primarily the craving or the desire is thought to be the root cause of the origin of suffering.
las tiene que se tiene kunjung to di sebala shagidwa tedan kunjung to sebala shadi digi nyamning nenga shabte gore kunjung to seba inzang as nyamning to gare shagido shinlo shagidwa kibu chungi che nyamne jogana sedila shimbalo gora kar sedila shijagena digi nensong le shagidwa digi nensong le dogana sedila shimbalo gogoda digi dini shenchadi kunjung to inzang shinlo di nyamning to shagidwa 어제던더니 디나시더니 나도 기부 딩기 겨사고나 코올레 심발 로고고다 그래서 코올레 심바디 드니 감공만 얘기 되감도 수감 숙명감 감순 원토게더니 레기 사이 규차기다 어디인데더니 디레 고도고나 코올레 심발 로고고다 디나시다 나서 당된레 심발로 세디 양 랑된레 심바차나 디양 가르소로 시와라 고래기 람로 어디인데 세바디 군중이 또 인정 신로디 당된의 심발로바 세들의 심발로바 크로와의 심발로바디 아니 기부 딩기 기부 중의 남당 기부 딩기 남기 냠내기 싸워차고 하래 진짜들이 아니 레 사당 하거나 냠내 지당기들이 냉가지 하고도
So, from the practical point of view, it is very important to know that the craving or the desire, attachment is the primary cause, primary origin of suffering. Then, as an antidote for it, our primary practice should be revulsion or renunciation. Usually, we have also in Tibetan also we have two words, Nyenjung and Shenlo. So, Nyenjung is translated as a renunciation, and then revulsion is translation of the Shenlo. So, and then for us, if you want to get free from, because if you are attached to this life, then you accumulate negative karma, which will cause you to reborn in the lower realm. Therefore, even though when we talk about the three kinds of individuals, the lesser individuals, middling individuals, and the great individuals, then all three of them, in order for us to practice any path of them, whether it is the path of the lesser individuals or the middling individuals or the great individuals, the revulsion or renunciation is the prime practice that we should have. Because if you are attached to this life, then there's no way that you can accumulate. And that means you have to have the pure revulsion or renunciation from this life, or from in order to be able to practice on the what you call the lesser individual, which means you are looking for the good result the next life. And then second one is the middling one is called, you are trying to get liberation from samsara. So for that also you need to have the pure sense of revulsion, and in order for you to have the genuine sense of renunciation or revulsion, you have to understand that the root cause of samsara is craving. And then the next one is we call the being attached to the pleasure of peace, which means you want to be liberated from yourself. For that also you have to have this practice. Therefore, understanding that the root of origin of the suffering is craving is very helpful for us to produce the genuine sense of renunciation or revulsion from samsara and from being attached to the pleasure of oneself. So it is a very important point here.
las tor dena dine na to shencha di kunjung gi to inzang shinlo de dine nyamling gi tawa chagwa re.
So in short, since being attachment, being attached or attachment is the primary cause of the truth of origin, practicing detachment or revulsion is the primary, should be the primary practice of us.
las digi da kunjung gi tsinyi da namba chadang she sa sa dine dring de sha na de da tesum je be ge sa wa de rang shin sim je tham je da tumon je de rang shin sim je tham je den shi ne lu tong ne thal ba da tham je ki ba to be chi do mo da mo nam gi sam je na wa ra shu.
Plus, rabge de song song la, rabge de song
아, 아니, 랍게,
이봐 이게 다 상이 성
랍게 되와, 랍게 되 라서, 라서. 맞다. 이 시사에서
오늘
랍게 되, 다 상이 시가 말해 돼.
성 두서 된 두서 조사도 나서 랍게
그래.
나서
랍게 상이 시가. 랍게
나서
체.
나서 so
라,
here we see that three of them three aspects of the origin of suffering which is cause origin and condition and I will start teaching tomorrow from the what we call the strong producer or rabke in Tibetan from tomorrow. Here we're going to do the dedication prayer here, so please think that whatever merit we have accumulated through teaching and listening dharma, we dedicate that for all sentient beings, so all sentient beings we will understand or realize completely the meaning of Four Noble Truths. And we do the dedication, whatever you will see on the screen.
담제 세바니 탐네 네베 다나 밤제 개가 나제바도 투바 이세베 솔레 도와 도라쇼 참그 지드라 킴바 군도 성보 대안 대진 대다 군기 제소 달로 진게와 대다 탐제라도 모 기나 대와 소소 뭐 펜데 남카 켜버라 도나 둥다게 그로와 둥에기 갸소 동바라쇼 엄베저 사마냐마누 부나야메다 사도데노 바티스타 드르메와 수도시오 메와 수보시오 메 아노라 와서와 시지 메브르 야사 서와 그러마 수다 메스템 시리양 그롱 하하하하 호보관 서와타사가 드바드라 맘메문다바드르 바 마하스메야사 또아
다소 그들은 산이제요.
나서 자는 거